This is Grant Nelson, and for my astronomy class, I'm doing a project, my exploration of the solar system project, where I will be talking about how I would plan out and how I would probably do an expedition to Mars. And what I would do in this project is, let me put it this way: if I was going to go to Mars, I would get together a space shuttle, resources to establish a small outpost there, like a manned mission, like enough resources to create like a small biodome, a small like habitable habitat where people could live, and like agriculture. I would do a lot of like I'd have equipment like rovers and shit to travel across the surface. I would also have like provisions, and of course I would recruit the people for the mission. I would look for volunteers because this probably would be a one-way trip. But I would also establish like communications and maybe like do a wave like thing, waves of colonization, waves of exploring, of landing on Mars. Because first wave, yeah, they're gonna be I don't want to say suicidal, but they're gonna be, for all intents and purposes, what I've seen and what I've researched, it's gonna be a one-way trip for the first wave. But that doesn't mean they can't like establish beachheads for further exploration, and maybe they could even like survive long enough to get back off the surface. I don't know. But like waves of colonization, waves of settlement, resources like renewable energy, a 3D printer, aspects like transportation across the surface, ways they could scientific equipment they could use to observe Mars's surface, its biosphere, what little is left of it, ways they could explore, like maybe find ways to like expand the biodome, ways they could take in more, they could maybe like expand the area of the habitat to maybe create more soil they could plant on. And for the ship travel itself, it's going to be like, best estimate from NASA resources and sources I've seen online from NASA websites, 9 months round to and from. I believe it would take 9 months to get to Mars alone. Let's see. I would also like create like so you would have to establish a space shuttle. You'd have to like create a vehicle capable of getting them there. So there'd be the shuttle itself, maybe like a landing series of landing rovers or like little cargo ships to get down to the surface. Other aspects that would impact the Mars exploration are like how long are they going to be able to survive? You know, like revisions. How are they going to survive on the planet's surface, like breathing equipment, like renewable resources. They also need to take into account like how hostile there might be chemicals in the air. So we might have to send like more probes to observe like the chemicals in the air, like any like things that would have you would have to create like a barrier system between any toxins in the plant surface and make sure that doesn't get into the habitat. So that's something we need to further research before we do any major trips, but really explore like the surface of Mars, like more reconnaissance equipment. We would need things like probes, scanners, further. We need to do more stuff. We need to send more probes and more detailed researches before we even send people to Mars. But other aspects of the thing are like waves of colonization, like how to like create like effective communication back between like NASA or whatever international space agency we have there. We maybe would have to set up satellites. We'd have to set up like a lot of like the demon in the room here is probably the logistics of it. That's gonna be a nightmare. So even before we land on Mars, we even send like an expedition. We need to understand the logistics, which could take years and years. But like maybe before we send like a permanent settlement to Mars, we need to like send permanent like put infrastructure in place, like probes and stuff, and like resources and caches of resources on the surface before like further probes, further like more like detailed equipment. We need to land there before we send people there. Other aspects to worry about are things like how should we worry about the livelihood of these people? Are they gonna have having like I would say I would give the people their vasectomies, and there has to be like we have to take into account the like the livelihood of the people there and see like how long they're gonna be here, how long, and like it's gonna be a series of people we're gonna send there, wave after wave. So like we gotta take into account their personal interests, the ways to keep them entertained, all sorts of like. That should be a very small worry though. I'm not saying they should live an ascetic lifestyle, but these people gotta be prepared for what they're getting into. So doing a lot of like testing, preparing and training the people that are going to go in there, training and preparing the colonists. That's going to be a huge worry. We also got to worry about if they're committed to this. Make sure they don't go insane. Like have like a team of people and experts that could land on the surface and maintain a livelihood and not do things they're going to regret. You know. Other aspects we should worry about. Really, the question is, would they be accepted to bring kids onto this outpost? Which is something I would say no, not at least not right away, or maybe if we want to establish a colony, I don't know. Those are things to take into account. Renewable resources. We should also have like renewable energy, sun absorption. Also like ways we can like solar power is something we should look into. Hydropower, like the huge importance of a biodome and like things like that could be very important to the lifestyle of the people on this planet, of this outpost. And further waves of colonization, there should be ways we should create like further like building upon the infrastructure of the colony, not just communication, but ways maybe eventually set up a spaceport, ways to get to and from the planet. This is going to take decades, if not the better part of a century, if we do this to establish a viable outpost on Mars. It's gonna be like the first travelers to a new world, like we saw back in the colonial era and the discovery of the new world. It's gonna be waves. People, there's a really good chance the first settlers will die of like diseases or malnutrition that we have to take into account. So we have to make sure the longevity of the people on this outpost is ensured, which is something we also got to consider. The resources necessary to do this, I would recommend having an international. It wouldn't just be a one nation. I think this should be like the International Space Station, and this should draw from people across countries, across governments. Other things I would say before we do this is we need to really make sure that this is beneficial and it could have huge benefits. Like a lot of the space age technology we take for granted, tinfoil, all that stuff, things that have really like pushed humanity forward in the past 50 years have all come from like the results of space technology. We gotta take that into account. You know, we really gotta focus on like we need to sell this, we need to pitch this, and the benefits that could come from just even like engineering the technology to survive on Mars could have huge commercial avenues to give further support, like household products that could change life and could give further money and credence to the idea. All in all, I think this is we need to do this. Landing on Mars is the most viable planet in our solar system, and it probably could have resources we could mine, use for further like building upon the outpost itself, and maybe even eventually if we get this stable spaceport going and stable travel back and forth between the Mars, like we could create like we could take resources back from Mars to Earth, like a stable spaceport, stable space lanes, are things we should take into account. And ultimately, this could take decades. At this point, it could take another couple decades before this even reaches the first wave. But it's worth it. If we become a multi-planet species, we can survive. Say nuclear holocaust happens on Earth. At least if we have a permanent establishment like Mars, the Moon, we can have like ensure some longevity to the human race. Becoming a truly interplanetary / interstellar civilization is the only way human life, and maybe even other forms of Earth life, could survive the long night, to use doing references here. But I'm really looking forward to this. Everything this could bring, everything this could propel humanity forward, it's worth it in my mind, although I don't take my word for it. This could be a huge step in propelling humanity forward evolutionary, biologically, technologically. So many ways that could benefit humanity, but we gotta consider all the factors first. Till next time, folks, stay sane. Resources I would recommend are NASA website, the Elon Musk has a lot of personal information on this on SpaceX. Go to NASA website, SpaceX, or that's the resources I use for this research. Also, I just Googled a lot of things from like other research I was there, like there's like other space exploration websites surround Mars. I'd recommend if you want to do further research on this. Give it a shot. I mean, like the best ones I can think of are Mars One, NASA, and SpaceX. Although Mars One is kind of defunct at this point, so take your pick. Till next time, folks. Stay sane.